Barb Brownson of Bloomfield Hills High School Visual Arts Department. I'm here with Zoe Gaiewski, and she's a candidate for the Visual Arts program, and she'd like to tell you a little bit about her art show.
Okay. My concept throughout my display is really about my perspective of the imperfect world through my view as like an adolescent. I come up with my concepts by becoming like enamored by like a certain object, concept, idea, and really just take it into my hands and put my twist on it, like based on the views of a teenager growing up in today's society. Some of my pieces really include like a satirical stance of like today's society, and others really like idolize, like glamorize certain icons that I think are like define our culture and our society.
Can you tell me which piece was your first piece of art that you created for this display?
My first piece of art is this one. This is a self-portrait of me. It's inspired by Picasso. In this piece, I was inspired by Picasso's ability to distort an image and like still make it identifiable to the audience. So I really took his technique and made my version of it, including elements popular in our society today.
Which piece was your last piece as you traveled along this whole pathway?
My last piece was this piece here. It's called Greek Goddesses Run the World. It was based off of my favorite childhood book, Percy Jackson. Even though I read that book a really long time ago, the theme of gods and goddesses still stuck with me because I just think it's so unique how they choose one person to represent a whole element of life. So I created a piece that represents the three main kind of gods and goddesses and made it into like modern versions of them. So this is Gaia here. She's the Greek goddess of the earth. This is Poseidon, the god of like the sea, and then this is Zeus. And you could see that they're woman and modernized.
Could you tell me which piece was the most challenging to create?
I feel like this piece right here is called Rough Night. It's really a step out of my comfort zone because it's 3D and usually I just work with paint. This piece really like captures the society's like addictions in today's culture. There's many addictions within this piece, like drugs, food, beauty, and I really wanted to capture all of that and like still like add my twist on it with like all the colors and like obnoxious like elements, I guess.
Out of all the pieces in this display, which piece probably shows your theme the best?
Definitely this piece. This piece is titled Mine. This piece is representing how big hair, big balloons, big anything is viewed as obnoxious in today's society. Like you're not really allowed to fully express yourself without being like put down from it. And so I created this parallel concept with big hair and big balloons and really put them both together.
And how did you create that piece? What medium has been used?
This piece is actually 2 watercolor paintings, and I digitalized it on Photoshop. I put them both together because originally there were 2 separate ones, and so I put the picture of the girl on top of the balloon.
Very nice. Tell us a little bit about the other piece that looks like a Greek goddess, or a kind of a from the past.
So this piece is titled The Birth of Venus. It actually resembles the other famous original painting, The Birth of Venus. And in that one, she's standing on an oyster in the middle of the ocean, being born, Aphrodite's being born, of beauty. And I created a satirical, modernized version again. Instead of standing in an oyster, she's standing in a kiddie pool shaped like an oyster. And instead of an ocean, she's holding like a hose. But I still included the old technique of like the halo around her.
Very nice. Can you tell us a little bit about the piece with the mask? Is very different. Tell us what you were thinking when you were doing that one.
This piece is titled, Will You Forgive Me If I Rob You? This piece, I think, really goes against the stereotypical robbery that society has put in our minds. So I went against that and glamorized robbery and included a girl that has all the stereotypical beauty standards within the piece behind the mask, with all the makeup and the beauty, and really glamorized and went against the stereotype.
Very nice. There's a piece that doesn't have a person in it. Mm-hmm. And it's very different as far as subject matter. Can you tell us a little bit about the piece right there?
So this piece is titled Call Me. This piece also uses marker instead of paint. This piece really incorporates the, I guess, element of like communication and how it's like kind of stinging us back. Like it bites back at us because how we're so involved and addicted to technology, I guess. And I wanted to create like a satirical stance of like communication. And this one is also inspired by Andy Warhol. He was a pop artist, and I included many of his techniques within this piece too.
The top two seem to be a little similar in how you created them with the knife and the stars. Are they both watercolors, or how did you create those?
Yes, this one is definitely all watercolor, except with the pen is used for like the stars, but this one is actually the same technique I use for mine. This is 2 watercolor paintings, and then I took it in Photoshop and edited it to make it come together. And this one actually has a lot of symbolism. For example, the beer cans in her hair represent her exes, and she's using them to like boost herself up because this piece is called Date Night, and she's holding a knife like a mirror for a reflection, kind of symbolizing that she doesn't want to get screwed over again. The fish in the sink actually symbolized her freedom, how in the like 1950s women were still, they were allowed to do things, but they were contained. So the fish are free, but they're still contained.
And what do the stars represent in the other one right next to it?
This piece is called Seen Stars. The stars represent how people are overwhelmed by emotion, and often I feel like overwhelmed with emotion from a bunch of stress from like today's society. So I wanted to capture that and include like the feeling of dizziness. So yeah.
I think we've covered everything except for the balloon head.
Oh yeah. This piece is called Smile. This piece is done in marker and then again edit it in Photoshop with the background. This piece really captures, I guess, the fakeness of people these days and how everyone just puts a smile on their face and pretends they're fine, even though they might not be. So I really wanted to create something that captures everyday, like, emotion.
Is there anything that I've missed or you want to talk about before we conclude?
I think we've got it all. With my work, I really want to like portray what is in today's society and really like give like the audience the perspective of like adolescents and teens and how we view the world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Hi, I'm Barb Brownson of Bloomfield Hills High School Visual Arts Department, and I'd like to introduce Annaliese Khemmoro. She is a candidate for the Visual Arts program, and here she'd like to talk about her display.
So my display focuses on the themes of woman empowerment and women's role in society and how women grow against all the discrimination that we face for hundreds of years.
Can you tell me a little bit about which piece probably best shows your theme for this?
I think the piece that best shows my theme for this is my most recent piece, Look into the Future, because this piece highlights what women are fighting for in society, such as body positivity, equal pay, consent, and the ability to be free with yourself and not have to be focused on what men and parts of the world think of you.
How was that piece created?
This piece is a new form that I actually discovered while taking IB Art. It's digital painting using programs such as Photoshop and Procreate, which is a new app on the App Store.
How did you learn that technique?
I learned that technique by doing my own research and by talking to teachers about how I should improve within my own paintings I've been doing outside of class.
Can you tell me maybe the first piece that you created, and we can look at the difference between medias?
The first piece I created in this course was A Vague Sense of Society, which is a piece made on wooden board, which is drawn on a bunch of book pages connected all together. And as you can see, it's really different from my last piece that I made.
And what does that mean? There's a lot of different things in that piece.
Well, this piece sort of focuses on a lot of issues that I know I'm passionate about because I'm a woman, and sometimes women are seen as unable to be outspoken in the world, such as like women shouldn't be in politics. But this sort of emphasizes that I'm a woman and I do know all these things. I do know about pollution, and I do know about how Black Lives Matter and addiction and other things that we face in the world.
What was the next piece that was created after that piece?
This is Athena's Vineyard, which sort of is a commentary on women's wisdom in the world, because Athena is a strong figure in Greek mythology, as she's like the goddess of Zeus. And she represents how feminism defies the norm of men holding women and being captured into just doing what men want.
That seems also kind of along the same theme. Can you tell us a little bit about the woman that's holding up that big piece?
This one is called Carry the Weight in the World, and it's made out of watercolor. And this is also another social commentary, like much of my other pieces are, but it sort of represents how women have a strong hold on our planet. We do have a footprint on this earth, and we carry a big part of the world, and she is at the center of the universe, literally, and she's carrying the sun, which is what all the planets spin around, so she's holding what makes our earth turn, literally.
The piece that's next to it, that has a blue background, seems very different from the rest.
Yeah, so this piece was inspired by the 1950s pop culture movement, which I've always been interested in, but never really had the chance to study until I entered IB Art. And the okay is sort of like what we feel on the inside sometimes as women. We often feel defeated by this discrimination and all the things we face, and sort of all these other pieces are sort of representing the strong side, but it is important to note that sometimes we do feel weak because we are human.
Very interesting. You also have another one that's different too, that's up there on the top, and yeah.
This is Daughter Earth, and she sort of follows the same theme, but it's made different. It's on acrylic theme. This is a young girl, and I was inspired by myself, actually, and I wanted to sort of emphasize how young women are the future generations are going to get us to what we are looking for in this piece, such as future pay and body positivity, and she's holding the world because she's going to be the one who changes the world.
She also looks like an alien. Is that, yeah?
She's an alien.
Okay, green kind of. The one below it and also the other one that right there, are those created the same way? And tell us a little bit. The one with the black hair?
These two, yeah, they're both more digital paintings like this one. These are both actually more social commentaries. This one is a tribute to Black women. So this is a famous R&B singer who is a strong representation of dark-skinned women in the music industry who don't get as much light as women of fairer skin. And this one is a commentary on how women who are woke AF, which is a term coined by the younger generation to sort of talk about being educated and socially aware. And she's in like devil horns because a lot of people in society think that women aren't educated, but she's sort of like defying that by being educated.
The one that's above you has 5 different women in it. Tell us how that all came about.
Well, this actually wasn't the plan. I was intending on making a book, but then I decided that in order for me to sort of highlight what I'm trying to say, which is that all different types of women are beautiful, such like you can't see because it's painted in paint, it's drawn in graphite, which is the whole point, that we are the same without differences in skin color, but I wanted to have them all next to each other to say we're united even though we are different skin tones.
And also the technique is a lot softer than some of that.
It's a lot softer.
So is that watercolor also?
Yeah, watercolor and graphite pencil.
Graphite together, okay. All right, very nice. And then the one on the wood is very different since you did it on a different kind of material. Tell us about how that was created.
This was painted with acrylic paint, ebony colored pencils, and on a wooden board. And it is a modern Helen of Troy. And if you don't know the story about Helen of Troy, Helen was the most beautiful woman in Athens, and she left her husband to go be with another man, and it sort of started the whole Trojan War. And I wanted to draw her more modern because I wanted to show that her story still matters, that women don't have to be tied down to a husband. You can go do what you want. And she's obviously physically beautiful, but she's also started this whole entire revolution of I'm a woman and I'm gonna go do what I wanna do.
Very nice. This one that kind of has the head emerging from a psychedelic background. Tell us a little bit about that.
This one is called Vertigo, and it's painted with acrylic paint on canvas. And the girl represented sort of, this can be interpreted by the audience, but my interpretation of my own painting was that the psychedelic and hallucinogenic background sort of signifies what we all take in as a society, as women in society, and what we constantly have to deal with. And it can be interpreted as something else, but that's just how I interpreted my own painting.
In the body of your work, did that come first, in the middle, or kind of towards the end?
This came towards the end.
Yeah, and so it's a little different in the fact that it's kind of just her head too, coming out of something. Yeah. And this one down here is kind of fairly new also.
Yeah. This is another digital painting called Pink World, and she is sort of a tribute to the color pink because I know there is a lot of talk about how pink isn't the feminist color, how if you're a feminist, you can't wear pink because pink is seen as girly, but that still sort of defies that, as I'm a feminist, and the whole point of feminism is equality. It doesn't matter what color you're wearing. You are who you are, no matter what the color of your shirt is and what your hair is. And she's wearing a blue shirt to sort of contradict the whole entire thing, that you can wear blue or pink. You are who you are.
And is that also a digital painting too?
Yeah.
Okay. And in your body of work, which technique or media do you really like using, since you've tried so many?
Yeah. I think my favorite technique in the moment, because it does change a lot, is digital painting, because I've just gotten so in love with it based from the past few months. But I think growing up, I was always drawing and painting since I was a kid, so that's always be my home in a way, in the art community. So I can't really pick between the two, but those are definitely my favorites.
Yeah, so maybe in the future, scanning in some of your work and painting on top of it.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. Is there anything that I forgot to ask you or you'd like to add to the show?
Just that I hope people are inspired by my theme and take away that anyone can be empowered by women empowerment, not just women, and that everyone's beautiful based on anything you want to be.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Hi, I'm Barb Brownson of the Bloomfield Hills High School Art Department, and I'd like to present Jack Wander with his exhibition for the IB Art program. And here he is.
Hi, so my art show was really about just your sense of place and representing the different cultures and just ideas when you travel to different places throughout the world, and really the feelings you take away from those places. Throughout the past 2 years, I really challenged myself to try and use other art forms other than just graphic design, because that was really where my comfort zone was. So as I went on throughout the year, I started doing a collage with paper mache and newspaper cut-ups, and to make a self-portrait. I used 3D objects to also make a self-portrait, and I even used charcoal to really make a macro drawing. And this was some of the stuff I learned throughout the past 2 years that put me out of my comfort zone and helped me to learn new things and represent this theme of culture and sense of place as well.
So as you've done all this experimenting, what is your favorite medium?
My favorite medium's definitely graphic design. Still, the last piece I did for the show was this piece up here, and I used graphic design. And the reason I chose that was I really just wanted to represent my favorite part of what I've done in the past 2 years and represent the theme really obviously and clearly, and kind of almost close out what I've learned over the past 2 years.
So that would be the piece that probably best explains your theme?
Yeah. I think even though it may not best explain all the details of the theme, there's different ones that may represent problems within an area, I think this one's the most straightforward and almost culminates my project and exhibition.
So what were the first two pieces? So we can...
My first two pieces was this sailboat piece and this lighthouse piece down here. When I first started 2 years ago, I had basic pictures, and in this one I only had one sailboat, and I didn't know how to represent my theme well enough to really make it extremely meaningful instead of just a sailboat. And that's where I went on to learn, maybe if I put 3 sailboats, make it my own artwork and not just a standard and cliche picture of a sunset or a sailboat, and really make it my own work. And as I went on, I think my theme became stronger and stronger throughout all the pieces, representing different issues within pieces, such as this piece over here, the one I called View into the Past, where I represented both an urban theme and a theme of nature, and kind of represented how looking into the past, what this world might have looked like with green, and then looking into the future and the present with an urban city. And this, I think, is one of the strongest pieces I made, both with the use of graphic design and color, and as well as just the theme itself. I feel is really strong in this piece.
Tell us about the one below that kind of reminds me a little bit of architecture.
Yeah, so this piece below, I'm really into architecture and construction. So this piece, I kind of wanted to represent that in a way while still representing the theme of like sense of place. So I used like an urban city again, and kind of used lines to draw the viewer's eyes down into the skyline from the sky and really get us a feel of where they are in the world.
The one that's up above is a very different feel, though. Tell us a little bit about what that one means.
Yeah, so this piece, I think it represented a sense of place, but it was more of a sense of like who you are more than where you are. And I think it still connects to my theme because it kind of represents, it has a young boy with a fishing rod and then his dad and then his grandfather and all walking down a railroad track. And I think I really represented just the theme of like passing something on from generation to generation and really understanding who you are and where you fit in the world. And I think that connected with my theme really well. And it was kind of a play on my theme to make it really connect with a wide variety of things.
I see the one behind you is kind of a breakthrough piece. Tell us a little bit about that piece.
Yeah, so this I think was my third or fourth piece with graphic design. And this was really the piece where I finally understood where I'm going with my theme and really how to represent it well within an piece of art. And I was able to really make this piece my own and not just a picture of a street and not just a bunch of street signs placed onto a blank background, and really represent this theme of traffic in an urban environment and a city. And like this piece was really taken from my trip to Chicago with our art class, and I was able to be inspired by that and all the horns honking on the streets and all the cars and congestion, and really I feel I represented that really well in the piece.
So you have an iPad there. Tell us a little bit about why that's there and what people are doing with that.
So this iPad was a way for viewers to give me feedback on my art show, and I felt that a lot of times in the IB art shows, people will use typically like a journal or piece of paper, but because of my love of graphic design and technology, I thought it wouldn't really make sense for me to do something like that, and to use an iPad, I think represented both my theme and just like the types of work I did really well. And on here, like I asked what message people take from my theme and my show, and like the piece of art that conveys it the best. And I've started to get feedback from people walking around and looking at it, and I think a lot of people so far have said that they are getting a theme of sense of culture and place, and that like this piece here represents it well as this piece here. So I'm proud that my theme is conveyed well.
Yeah. Your name tag is quite unique too. Want to
Yeah.
tell us how you made that?
Yeah, so this name tag, I made it after this piece right here, and it was inspired by Saul Bass. So I've heard of Saul Bass before, and as I started making pieces, I looked at him for inspiration before, but this piece here, I was really inspired by Saul Bass, and I fell in love with his graphic design work and just his use of colors and really simplicity in his work, which is why these pieces are really simple. They really only have one object or shape in each piece, and this was inspired by his piece for the Vertigo movie cover, and I just used like his circular lines in it, and I thought it represented my theme well.
Very nice. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to add to the interview?
Yeah, I think we haven't talked about these pieces too much, so I think that these pieces, they stand out a little bit as they're not graphic design, and I think that they still represent the sense of culture really well, in that I was able to use scraps and stuff that typically wouldn't have meaning around us and represent myself with them, and I think that's really meaningful and represents my theme. And also to kind of just conclude, like I think over the past 2 years that I've really learned a lot from the IB art class, and just how to represent myself through artwork, how to represent different themes through artwork, and really a sense of just my love of art has grown greatly, and I love that, and I thank the IB for that.
Thank you very much, Jack.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barb Brownson of the Bloomfield Hills Hills High School Art Department, and I'm here with Caelan Jansen, and I'd like her to explain a little bit about her visual arts program for the IB Art.
Hi, I'm Caelan. So for my exhibit, I mainly focused on conformity that I see throughout society. There's a lot of different examples of this. I see a lot of oppression and racism through conformative standards and people wanting everyone to be the same. And because of that, people tend to be biased against people who are different. And I used that kind of idea a lot throughout my show.
Which piece do you think best exemplifies your theme?
I don't think that I'd be able to choose just one that exemplified it the most. I'd say the top two would be this one, Standards, because it's directly a picture of a person who's being forced to conform to certain body standards, and then there's people around her who are all conforming to different beauty standards, like makeup and hair and body images. And I think that it's sort of a simplification of these and how, but it also shows like the horror and the shockingness behind following these kind of standards. And I also think that Torn represents my theme a lot because it's directly showing a person who's being torn apart, his cultural identities kind of being torn apart between he's a Mexican-American immigrant, and it's showing the side of him that wants to hang on to his Mexican culture, but the side that's also being forced to conform to American language and different parts of American culture that he has to be a part of being an immigrant to America. So I think that those two best represent what I'm trying to say.
Which was your first piece that you created for this display?
My first piece was Facing Reality, and it's a sculpture of a face that I sculpted, and there's many different types patterns of fabric that are placed on it, and it's meant to represent the different fabrics of society, so to say, that make up one complete culture. And then the back of it has news articles from different newspapers that are talking about occurrences of racism and cultural ignorance in society. So it's sort of a contrast between what should be happening, everyone being together, and then what is happening, which is a lot of ignorance about the cultures that are all together.
And with that, the one that's kind of with all the faces, it seems like it might have...
It has a sort of a similar idea. It has a bit of a similar tone to Facing Reality, but Conviction is talking about I guess there's a lot of different abstracted, strange, inhuman like characters, but there's also human, and they all represent different identities in society, and how even though they're so different, everyone's placed in the same confinement, and they're all forced to be sort of the same even though they're so different.
The one that is really different for me is the one with the light coming up.
Yeah, I think this was showing a much different side than these two and a lot of the other pieces that are in the show. For me, this went along with my show really well because it's showing a woman in society who's looking forward, even though she's surrounded by darkness and a lot of like sexism and different issues that sort of make the world around her darker. She's looking forward and seeing a much brighter future where maybe she can be more accepted and treated as well as she wants to be.
And what medium did you use for that?
I used a colored pencil, acrylic paint, oil pastel. Just a combination of all of those.
Tell us a little bit about the two little portraits down there together.
So Outside the Lines, which is the title of it, is two people who are, sort of shows the lines that society draws around people that they want everyone to fit inside of. And then the watercolors that's splattering outside is showing that most people don't confine within these lines and that they have personalities and beliefs and interests that aren't considered normal or the the normal beliefs or what everyone wants them to be conforming to.
The two large portraits, one really looks like you, and then the other one maybe a little different. Can you tell us about how those transpired?
Well, I created this one, C, first, and it's realism, it's hyper-realism, I guess, but it's also very simple. It's the bare, like black and white, monotone, I guess like representation of myself. So it's not showing a lot of my personality or my identity at all. It's just showing what I look like and what people see when they look at me. And this one I felt showed the oversimplification of when you see someone and you don't know more about who they are, you're just seeing what they look like and you're not really understanding who they are as a person. And I also emphasize this through enlarging the eyes to focus in on the sight that is emphasized in this piece. And then for feel, it's completely different. It has absolutely no realism. Everything's pretty much like messed up and like
What were you looking at when you were doing that?
well, I wasn't looking at myself at all. I was just painting what I felt, and it's supposed to represent more of what you feel inside rather than anything that is seen. Even though it is a figure of a person, it's very unhuman and doesn't really represent a lot of human traits, I guess.
And the one below kind of has that same feel also.
Yeah, it does. This one's supposed to, it's supposed to have a lot of different movement and dizzying colors that make it kind of confusing and like just discombobulating. And it's supposed to represent someone's lack of identity and their loss of identity. And it also it's not very realistic, even though it has human traits. It's not very human, I guess, and so it's more of the figurative aspects of human nature rather than the physical.
This almost looks like a piece right here. Tell us a little bit about how you did that. Yeah.
Oh, it's a jar that I put a lot of the same fabrics from Facing Reality on. Doesn't really have a meaning.
What's it for though?
Oh, it's for people to write their reaction to all the pieces and to put it in there.
That's amazing because you made it almost like a piece that goes with the whole thing. And is there anything that I have neglected to ask or that you want to share with us?
I guess I wanted to talk a little about like my favorite piece to make. Yeah. I guess I really liked making the more abstract pieces, even though this was my first try with like realism, and then I did Through the Glass Ceiling, which is also mostly realism. And even though I liked doing that, I enjoyed making the abstract and more multimedia pieces a lot more because I felt I could represent a lot more ideas through different media and different like abstract types of artwork.
You seem very comfortable with that kind of art making.
Yeah.
And just letting the paint kind of flow. Mm-hmm. So great. That's really amazing. Yeah. And with that, do you have a favorite medium?
Yeah, I'd probably say like using acrylic paint with other media. Like I really liked using acrylic paint in this one. I put fabric with the acrylic paint just to add some more texture and different
buttons too.
Yeah, and buttons. I like using the acrylic paint because I like how easy it is to mix and make texture with, and I like adding different elements to it to like bring that like aspect of it more out.
Almost everything has acrylic paint as I look around.
Yeah, I think everything does have acrylic paint at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for us?
Well, I really like how in doing the IB art program, I was able to grow a lot with my, I guess, ability to create more more pieces that are based more around an idea rather than what is seen. I was able to, like, first I'd come up with the idea of what I'm trying to convey, and then I'd create a piece about that rather than looking at a subject and then just painting something. I really liked being able to do that more.
I can definitely see that growth in here. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Looks very nice. Hi, I'm Barb Brownson of the Bloomfield Hills High School Visual Arts Department, and I'm here with Andreas, candidate for the IB program. He'd like to talk a little bit about his visual arts display.
Hi, I'm Andreas Quiroga-Elizondo, and for my IB Visual Arts display, I chose to focus on the relationship between humanity and its environment. And really, through my pieces, I hoped to encompass the positive side effects and the negative side effects that arise from humanity and nature working together and how it affects humanity overall.
Which piece do you think actually shows your theme the best?
I would have to say that this piece fits my theme the best. It's called Quantified, and the reason I say this is because it's the clearest depiction of humanity and nature colliding and working with one another, and I think it just very clearly encompasses my theme.
Can you also tell me which piece was the first one that you created?
The first piece that I ever created was this one, Longevity. And the meaning behind this one was really to show the unity that humanity and nature can have, and how both humanity and nature grow and develop and eventually die. And it was just supposed to show how similar nature and humanity are.
Can you tell me what the last piece was that you created?
The last piece that I created was also Quantified.
And right before that, which one was that?
Before that, it was this one, Homesick. Perfect. So this piece was meant to show how urbanization and industrialization affects wildlife and natural environments. The eggs and the separation between, like the eggs in the nest and the bird flying away, is supposed to signify the separation of animals from their environment. And the pollution in the background is supposed to allude to the urbanization and industrialization.
And how, what material did you use for that piece and the one with the flowers too?
For Longevity and Homesick, I used acrylic paint on canvas.
Oh, what's your favorite media?
My favorite medium would have to be digital art, specifically Adobe Illustrator.
So which pieces were created with those?
So Adobe Illustrator was used to create this one, Polar Heat Wave. It was also used to create Quantified, and it was used to create Viscosity, this one with the bees, and it was also used to create Dilemma, the self-portrait.
Was the one at the bottom used?
The bottom one was used for digital art, but it was actually used for Adobe Photoshop. I actually, took the pictures myself and overlaid them using Photoshop tools.
Why do you like Illustrator better than the Photoshop program?
I like Illustrator better because it gives me more freedom to work with what I want to work. I think it has a lot more tools, and with those tools I'm able to create more of what's in my mind. And I think Photoshop, you have to capture the picture and capture what you want to convey, and then Photoshop it into what you want. But Illustrator really gives me the freedom to create what I want directly from my mind.
Tell us a little bit about the piece with the smokestacks and what that one's about and how you created that.
So this one is called Dilemma, and it's supposed to depict the road that our society is on in terms of environmental change and the revitalization of our planet. And the tree stumps are supposed to be coming at you towards like the viewer to allude to a sense of destruction and deforestation. And the road, the one-point perspective of the road is supposed to suggest that this is the path that we are headed on, metaphorically, in terms of nature.
And what material is that created with?
This one was used oil pastel with paper.
Very different from the other ones.
Yep.
Tell us about it appears to be a whale above that, and that looks different also.
Yeah, this piece is titled The Polluted Pacific, and it's acrylic paint on canvas. But after I painted it, I actually created photo transfers using tape and printed headlines, and I then created a collage over the painting of the whale. And the meaning behind this one is it's supposed to shine light on marine pollution and how it takes a toll on aquatic life. And the surrounding of the whale is supposed to depict how people don't really see the issue and they think the ocean is beautiful as is. But the collage was placed on the whale in order to emphasize that the animals are the ones that are hurting and facing the negative consequences of pollution.
The one that's to the right of that, it looks like a self-portrait, and you said that one was created in Illustrator. What were you thinking about that as far as your theme?
This one is a lot more personal in terms of the theme. It's supposed to depict my stance on society's attempts to revitalize nature, and the dissatisfied expression on my face is supposed to suggest that humanity hasn't really taken the steps necessary to revitalize nature, and that change needs to come. And the ivy leaves that are growing on the sides are supposed to allude to that feeling of nature and the relationship between nature and humanity.
Were those always there, or?
No, initially the self-portrait was just without the leaves, but the leaves were added later in order to bring out the message a lot more clearer.
Okay. There's one that almost looks like a person, but not quite. Can you tell us a little bit about how that was created?
Yes, this piece is called Unity, and it's supposed to intentionally depict a mountain scenery, as well as have a hidden expression within the ridges of the mountain. And the point of that was to really bring emphasis towards the unity that humanity and nature have and should have in our society. The pleasant expression on the mountain is supposed to suggest that it is content and happy with its relationship with humanity, and the bright colors are meant to allude to that feeling of joy and happiness.
Very nice. Tell us a little bit more about the bees. As far as that's created, it's a little different in composition, the way it's done.
This piece was definitely one of my toughest pieces to make, because I really struggled with the composition of the bees and how to really use composition to bring out my message. Initially, there wasn't the background with the gears, and it was just the natural bees and the robotic bees, and the composition was not very intentionally placed for the message to come out. The bees were kind of in the center, and it didn't really have a very natural composition. So to resolve that, I added the gears in the background to kind of shift the composition and move the bees farther away from the robotic bees to suggest that they are being driven out of their environment.
By the robotic bees.
Yes.
Very interesting. And is this representing the polar
heat wave?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this piece was also created using Adobe Illustrator. It was my very first piece using Adobe Illustrator, which was kind of tricky to figure out. But after I kind of mastered the tools and like how to, render the shapes, I was able to have a lot of fun with it. And yeah, the message behind this piece is supposed to be the sense of destruction that comes with the glaciers that are melting in our oceans. And the 1 point perspective was intentionally placed to make it feel as though this future is coming at us and is upcoming.
Speaking of the future, as you move towards the future, will you still include painting and also Illustrator, or will you just go towards one? Or how are you going to reconcile those two?
I think I'm definitely going to continue using both mediums, both painting and Illustrator, because I think they give you different aspects of what message you want to convey. I think with Illustrator, as I said before, it gives you a lot of freedom and versatility in the tools that you can use and the colors that you can use as well. But painting, the texture that is created with the painting and the technique and the movement that can be created with paint is so unique to painting that I don't think I would ever stop doing it.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you'd like to add?
I'd just like to add that I'm very grateful for having been a part of this visual arts program, and it truly has given me a chance to explore my artistic abilities, both, as we mentioned, through painting and drawing, and digitally as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barb Brownson of the Bloomfield Hills High School Visual Arts Department. I'm here with Anisha Nahta, and I'd like her to tell us a little bit about her visual arts exhibition.
Hi, I'm Anisha, and my theme for my exhibit is finding my identity and morals in today's world.
Can you tell us a little bit about where you started and your first piece?
My first piece is right here. It's called Creativity. It was when we took a class trip to Chicago, and while we were looking through the art galleries, I got inspired. As you see, this is me looking at a piece of art, and I got inspired to make this piece.
Which piece was your most difficult piece to create?
My most hardest one would be here. It's called Fashionability. This was a really time-consuming process. I had to first find images online of 90s fashion pictures, actually. Then I tinted them a certain color, then printed them out, and then put them into a tape transfer. And then by that, I also cut them out and then put them on a glass board right here.
Very nice. Long, tedious. And can you tell me which piece was your last piece, too?
Sorry, what?
Which piece was your last piece that you created in this process?
My last piece was this one called Femininity. It's a bunch of square canvas pieces that I put a bunch of paint on and then dried in a very interesting texture. And I put them all together to make a collage of a girl wearing a crown.
When you're looking at this exhibit, what piece best shows your actual theme?
My theme? Probably this one, because it shows, it's called Insanity. It shows both the identity and the moral side of my theme, because you see, this represents me and how I feel through, I guess, different types of things that kind of define me, such as report cards and standardized tests. So it kind of gives a commentary on how, I guess, school can deteriorate someone's peace, but also how it does that to me too.
And when you're taking a look at this, there's a lot of different media here. What's your favorite one in this?
My favorite would have to be the ink pen that I used for Nobility. I used both tea and ink pen, but I like India ink because I can get it to be really tiny lines. If you look here, they're really tiny and really precise and easy to, I guess, show what I'm trying to see, with the elephant right here.
And it seems like that's very different subject matter. Why did you choose that elephant for the project?
Well, I was gonna make Japanese-inspired art, as you can see by the tea and the very tiny lines, which is a Japanese style. But I chose the elephant because in my culture, in Indian culture, the elephant is really noble. It shows wisdom. And so I also wanted to show that in a very positive light, as you can see here. And I kind of show how both cultures kind of are shown in one piece.
There is a woman that looks kind of like a pop artist, kind of taken from a movie. Tell us a little bit about that.
This one's called Representativity. This is actually inspired by one of my favorite movies, Star Wars. It was Princess Leia, but I kind of altered the image to make a Indian version of her to kind of show how there aren't much representation in major films. There's mostly white people rather than people of color. So I kind of want to show how it would look if a person of color, Indian, would be in a major Hollywood film.
Above that, you have 3 women represented. How are those people representative in your eyes there?
So this is diversity. I showed 3 different women of different cultures. One's black, one's Eastern Asian, and one's Indian. And I show them with like black lines on their eyes, their mouth, and on her it's her bindi. It's in trying to show how they are, well, this shows cultural oppression on her bindi. This shows how minorities have been silenced, and this is representing how they are perceived unfairly.
And the eye is down at the bottom of that. Maybe you want to tell us about why is the eye crying, and there's a lot of different colors in that eye.
This is called Incredulity. I wanted to show, it's supposed to be my eye, my like teenage eye growing up and realizing what the world really is like, and looking at the world and seeing it go through a lot of trauma and pain, which the fire represents, and me crying at it because the world isn't really what I thought it would be.
And maybe that leads us to the other piece that's on the pedestal. That's your 3D piece right there.
That's Instability. That is that's a political message for the wall between the USA and Mexico. That's been a very popular political issue lately, and what I did is showed the American and Mexican side of the wall, and showing how a family is separated at the border. And if you look on the sides, there is poetry, one in English and one in Spanish on either side.
And then you have 2 self-portraits there, done in a very different way. Tell us a little bit about those.
Well, I used ink pen in here and colored pencil here. It's they both show me in a very happy, content version of myself, kind of the version of myself I like to show the world, the version of myself I'm trying to be, and that's kind of what's representing. The different colors and you can see like the smiles on my face kind of show how happy I really am in that.
In the context of the time, when were those 2 created? Like before what other pieces in the display?
I think these were done in summer, so my most happiest, and that's when these were created. And it's kind of in the before I made the more negative side of my exhibit, like this piece, and those pieces.
Is there a piece that most represents your show, the whole theme?
As I said, this piece right here, it shows both the identity and moral side of my theme, but I don't think just one piece kind of shows the entire theme of me finding my identity and morals in today's world, because there's so many aspects to that.
Is there anything that I did not ask you or you would like to include in the interview?
No, I'm good. Got everything.
Thank you very much.